morning. Hello. Here we are again. This is Tuesday. We're currently looking at the 31st of March. Tomorrow, moving into April. This Friday, we will be having our first test since school took a break. And I figure it's a good time because that'll drop it right before we have our actual spring break week. And you guys will have some pretty minor stuff to do during that. We're being asked to do a little bit, so I'm just going to do a little bit. I'm going to ask you guys over the course of the entire break to watch one 15-minute video, and that's it. So it should be pretty simple. Kind of thing you can knock out bit by bit because it is split into 12 different segments. Each one is only about 2 minutes long. Or you can sit down and watch the whole thing in one go, whatever works best for you. But today we're finishing up the last of our notes on the digestive system. And this part of the digestive system, really what we want to look at is how are the different body systems interacting with one another. We've already gone over what the organs are and what that looks like. So remember, let me bring this up for everyone. So remember, the digestive system, when we take a look at it, it's composed of a bunch of different organs, and all of these different organs have a particular job. Now, we've already talked about what these jobs are. The mouth is mechanical digestion, chews up the food. The esophagus uses peristalsis, which is muscular contractions, to push food to the stomach. The stomach uses chemical digestion, thanks to our good friends, the enzymes, special class of protein molecules. Remember, this is the primary way that basically all living things will break down material. It can also be used to build things, but especially in the digestive system, we're looking at digestion, which means to break down. The liver and the gallbladder produce bile, which helps to break down our lipids, turning them into the monomers, or the fragments that make up fats. The pancreas, we know, connects in. Now, it also adds some enzymes and stuff. It's not just insulin, but remember, insulin is always our key for the pancreas. It's always our key that there's something going on there and what that something is. The small intestine sees the diffusion of nutrients into the blood because it's digested in the stomach, then absorbed into the intestinal lining, and then that diffuses those nutrients into the blood so that it can be moved around. The large intestine picks up all that water that's been used in order to help aid digestion up until this point, and it reabsorbs it so that we're not losing huge amounts of water every time that we use the bathroom. And then finally, the rectum, that is the last stop, and by this point, not all, believe it or not, not all of the food, not all of the nutrients has actually been digested and removed, but a good amount of it has. There are animals called coprophages, and what they do is they live by eating their own poop. Rabbits are one example. As a matter of fact, a lot of our plant-eating animals will sometimes, shall we say, give it a second try, because in the first time digesting all that plant material was just too much for them. And so there's still nutrients left to be had. It's gross to us, but only because we are not coprophagic organisms. Similarly, this cute little white fluffy dog will probably stick her head right into a cat bin and start eating cat poop out of it because cats are not super efficient digesters. And so a lot of the protein from their food is still left in their poop. That's the reason that dogs will pull it out of litter pans and munch on it, disgustingly, because they can smell what is left behind there, not just poop, and to them, that's the possibility of some more nutrition, possibility of more of a meal. So what we're going to talk about now are conditions in the digestive system. And this isn't going to take much, but there are a huge number, an unbelievable number of people who are currently suffering from one of these diseases. Whether we're talking about ulcers in the stomach, acid reflux, celiac, Crohn's, ulcerative colitis is very similar to Crohn's, but there are differences. and then irritable bowel syndrome, which is what we're going to end with because the medical system currently uses irritable bowel syndrome kind of as a catch-all. Like if they don't know what else you have, they just call it irritable bowel. So, let's go over each of these. Right now, in the United States, it is estimated that there are 60 to 70 million people suffering from some form of digestive issue. Now, the digestive system has a lot of organs, there's a lot of functions, there's also a lot of space. The more of each of those things that you have, the greater the chance that something can go wrong. And it's terrible to think about. But with numbers like that, and keep in mind, that is just diagnosed, there's estimated to be up to another 100 million Americans. This is all just in America. But another 100 million Americans who also suffer from digestive issues, but it's merely never been diagnosed. To them, it's just they know they shouldn't eat this food, or they grumble about it, but they don't actually see a doctor. So with numbers like that, I'm willing to bet that most of you know somebody who suffers from at least one of these. Some of you may be the people who suffer from some of these. Like, it is a very real thing. And out of all of the body systems that we have, excluding maybe the skin or something like that, this is by far the most prone to some kind of issue. So let's take a look at them. We're going to go one by one. We're going to start pretty simply with ulcers, and then we will move on from there. So ulcers are going to be a hole in your stomach or other organs. It can happen in a number of different places, but usually when somebody says ulcers, they mean the stomach. Now, it can be caused by a lot of different things, but ultimately anything that disturbs the lining of your stomach being able to do its job is what's going to cause this problem. We've seen it from bacterial infections and drugs, both prescription and otherwise. But the bottom line is your stomach produces a lot of acid. That acid is designed to help break down stuff. It doesn't do that job. We need the enzymes for it, but it helps. Well, all that's good, but acid is just a chemical. There's no brain, there's no directive to it. The acid can't look at your stomach and go, well, that's the organ that makes us, so we better not digest that. We better just digest all the rest of this stuff. It can't do that, which means that your stomach needs some kind of protection. And your stomach has protection by a thick layer of mucus that's produced by the cells on the inside of the stomach in order to keep the stomach acid and the enzymes that are squirted into it from coming back and starting to digest the cells that make up the stomach itself. Now, because I don't want to get banned from Twitch again, I'm not going to show a picture of this live. You can look it up if you're interested. But basically, an ulcer is a hole that starts to get eroded or pushed through the stomach and its lining due to the stomach acid coming into contact with it. It can be very painful. Obviously, it can disrupt other issues. It can cause vomiting. Often then there's like blood because that hole is digesting into the surrounding circulatory system. It can be serious. This is also known to be caused by stress. So if you're feeling overly stressed out and your stomach's not right, well, if it's long term, see a doctor, because it's possible this may be it. Probably not. A lot of times, stress and being anxious will just make our stomach feel upset, so it's probably not ulcers, but maybe. And if you're concerned, see your doctor about it. Now, these fish, this is just a whole line of different minnows and stuff, but fish actually survive due to their slime coat. And by keeping that slime coat intact, you can maintain the health of a fish even in an aquarium or anywhere else, as long as it's in the water. The slime coat helps to protect them from all the other things. Anything that wants to get at these fish gets stuck in that slime coat along their outside. Just like our stomach. That stomach lining is like a slime coat, and it protects the stomach from any additional damage. Acid reflux is incredibly common. So normally we've got this sphincter up here. Sphincter is just a muscle ring that can pinch shut or open up. So normally when you eat food, it comes down the esophagus, gets pushed into the stomach, and then this sphincter, that muscle ring, locks shut. It doesn't let anything else in. So now your stomach will flip, it'll churn, it'll mix, it'll do whatever it needs to for that digestion to happen. And all the stuff that gets sloshed and splashed around just gets sloshed and splashed around. Unless you have acid reflux. And what that's caused by is the sphincter right here, that muscle ring can't close. And if it can't close, it can't seal off the stomach. Imagine the difference between taking a 2-liter soda bottle full of soda and you shake it. And the first time you shake it, you have that cap on nice and tight. It's sealed. The second time, only put that cap on about halfway and see what happens. Right? This is exactly what acid reflux is. Except for now, instead of spraying out all over your hands and your clothes and stuff, now it's got to get pushed up into the esophagus. The esophagus does not have a mucus lining. It does not have a slime coat in order to protect it. And so that stomach acid and enzymes just start to eat away at the esophagus. That's the burning and the pain that people get. Celiac disease is one of those interesting ones that's getting more and more common as time goes on, and we're seeing more and more cases of it. And basically, all it means is that for whatever reason, your body's immune system is identifying gluten as a pathogen. It's recognizing like it would a virus or a bacteria and it's trying to attack it. The problem is that that causes a lot of immune activity on the stomach lining here. And when it's on the stomach lining like this, we see normally the villi along the inside of the small intestines are these big, long, finger-like projections so that as food passes through between them, there's a lot of surface area to absorb it and pull it in. Well, the immune system, if it's overly active here, will cause damage to nearby cells. We watched the immune system video a while ago, and it talked about how some of these T cells will fight so furiously that they'll kill healthy cells nearby too. Well, the end result is your celiac disease side here, where the villi have now been reduced to just these tiny little bumps, greatly reducing the amount of surface area you have to absorb food. That is the pain and the inflammation and the damage that someone with celiac disease suffers if they eat something with gluten that sets off this immune response. So here is one of those interactions. The immune system is now interacting with the digestive system directly and not in a positive way. Crohn's disease is an odd one. It's kind of hard to pin down because Crohn's disease can be caused by a lot of different things that could affect inflammation of just about any part of the digestive system. Usually, the most common form we find is with the large intestines, the ascending side, transverse, and then the last end down to the rectum, the colon. These three parts of the large intestine tend to be the most common sites for Crohn's disease to cause inflammation, but they're not the only ones. It can happen in the small intestines. It can happen in the stomach. It can happen anywhere along this tract. And quite often, the symptoms of this can vary wildly because it could just, hurt a little bit. It could cause diarrhea or constipation. So both sides of that are possible. Could cause malnutrition because the discomfort created is so great that people will avoid eating because they just don't want to deal with that pain. And because it's not allowing your body to absorb things, right? Possible fatigue because you don't have the fuel to keep going. Now, commonly confused with Crohn's disease is ulcerative colitis. Now, Crohn's disease can affect anywhere in the digestive system, anywhere throughout this. Ulcerative colitis only affects the large intestines, and in more than 80% of the cases, it only infects the part that we call the colon, which is this last part that's colored in red that I've been tracing. So that means, because it's only large intestines, we see one of two issues here. We either see constipation, because the large intestines are taking too much water, or we see diarrhea because the large intestines are taking too little water. Now, this is usually caused by ulcers, which, hopefully, if you remember back a bit, ulcers are a hole. So, in this case, ulcerative colitis are going to be little ulcer holes in your large intestines that are causing the inflammation and the immune response there that's getting in the way. Now, this could be caused by a lot of different things, and I'm not going to start WebMDing on that. But if you know somebody who suffers from this, well, that's the part of their body that has an issue. And finally, Irritable Bowel Syndrome, or IBS as it's called for short. So, if you've got some sort of digestive abnormality, some sort of issue, and the doctors have looked at it, and it's not ulcers, and it's not Crohn's or celiac or ulcerative colitis. Geez, I cannot say that. And and they've looked through the other options too, because there are lots of other diseases, and they just can't pin it down. They don't know what the problem is. Then they will label it IBS. And basically, what this means is something in your digestive system is not working right. There is something that is irritating it, hence irritable, so it can't do all of its job. And that means you could have all sorts of different issues. You can see them highlighted here: pain, cramping, gas, diarrhea, or constipation. The causes can be varied. It might be what you eat. It might be what you eat and what you drink. It might be something completely different. Maybe it's genetic. Maybe it's environmental. Maybe you're breathing in something that's causing your immune system to go on high alert because it thinks you're being attacked by a pathogen. But because your immune system is on high alert, now all of a sudden it's kind of doing a celiac disease type thing, and it's now starting to identify things that are in your intestines as being pathogenic when it shouldn't. Maybe. Irritable bowel syndrome is very hard to pin down because we just use it as a catch-all for any problem that's happening digestively that we really can't figure out. And irritable bowel syndrome affects a huge, huge, huge number of people. I'm willing to bet that if all 70 of my students watch this video, we're going to have at least 10 of you that have had a doctor tell you that you might have IBS, probably. It is that common. So, with that noted, there's only one thing left to talk about. And this one is rough. This one's not pleasant. So, a little bit of warning. If you don't like kind of a disturbing image, then by all means, don't look at the screen coming up here, because this can bother some people. And we're going to be talking about malnutrition. And if we're talking about malnutrition, you see scenarios like this. And literally that just means that the individual doesn't have the nutrients that they need in order to survive. And that causes the body to attempt to do whatever it can to survive. And largely, the example that we see in a heartbreaking picture like this is where the body has started to consume itself. It's consuming its muscles, probably some of the internal organs, all in an attempt to keep it functioning long enough for food to be found. And in all sorts of places over this world, this is a very real issue. And not having the nutrients that you need during development can cause all kinds of abnormalities and issues during growth and the development, because you don't have the building blocks that are required. It can be lethal in some cases. And while I hope that there is nobody listening to this that has ever needed to experience actual starvation, I'm sure that there is. It is an incredibly unfortunate truth in our society now that for some people, food is not a right. And there are systems that keep people from getting the things that they need. And I really hope that we see that change, because that's an unacceptable condition. No one should ever have a child that ends up looking like this. All right, let me get away from that. All right, so that's going to sum up our conditions for the digestive system. We're going to be looking at a test coming up this Friday. Tomorrow I've got a review project. The day after that, I have a review test. All of this is already on Schoology. All of it's already available for anybody to practice and go through any part of it that you want. Already done. So, if you want to work ahead, work ahead. If you're not sure on something, this gives you time to look at it and then come back to me. Tomorrow, I'll talk about the project and explain that. I'll also take questions from anything that people want me to go over. Thursday, I'll be here to answer any questions and review some of the material one more time with everyone. And then on Friday, I will have the link for the test live in the folder, and everybody should be able to get it done hopefully pretty quickly. All right. Well, thank you, folks. It's been good. Hopefully, I'll see more than one person next time. Hello, one person. Bye.